So welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending where you happen to be. Thank you for joining us, our 174th Running Online Sports Economics Seminar. We're very pleased to have Leo Morabito from the University of Milan presenting today the pursuit of fairness in ongoing evaluations, evidence from referees' decisions in soccer. Just to quickly say as we start, we are, as always, sponsored by the Sports Economics Review. Perhaps you can see on my left there, I don't know if you can necessarily, depending on your view, but I've got the journal cover up there, a recent journal in the area of sports economics with a very fast turnaround. So do consider the Sports Economics Review for your papers. Leo, I haven't checked with you. Are you happy to take questions as we go along, or would you prefer questions to be parked for the end?
However you prefer, or the audience prefer, for me to see.
It's up to you, really.
Maybe at the end, so would be better at the end, maybe.
At the end? Yep, sure.
Yeah.
So if folk have questions, if you have questions for clarification while Leo's talking, then raise your hand. But otherwise, we'll have lots of time at the end, a whole half an hour for Q&A. So, Leo, all yours.
Thank you, James. Hello, everybody. My name is Leo Morabito, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Milan. And today I'm excited to present you this preliminary work I'm doing together in collaboration with Professor Vincenzo Scoppa from the University of Calabria. And we gave the title, The Pursuit of Fairness in Ongoing Evaluation, Evidence from Referees' Decision in Soccer. And in this research, we explore how individuals, in our case, soccer referees, make decisions that can be influenced by their pursuit of fairness. So this is the outline of my presentation, and I will begin by introducing the key concepts of our research. Then I will show you the theoretical model we developed that focuses on the referee's utility. Then I will show you the main features of our data, and afterwards we will deep into the econometric analysis that we split into. The first half is about the penalties, the red cards and the yellow cards, and the second half is about the additional time or injury time. And at the end I will give you some conclusion or implication. So in many areas of our society, whether it's business, courts, schools, or every place in which individuals are called for evaluation, subjective evaluation indeed play a key role. And ideally, this evaluation are supposed to be objective and fair. But in reality, sometimes they are shaped by internal and external influences. For example, cognitive biases, such as the availability bias or the social pressure, and these two things can skew these decisions, this evaluation, along, of course, with other factors like desire for approval or concerns about the fairness. So, and the problem is that in this context, in this real world context, it is often difficult to analyze the fairness of these evaluations or the influence of, for example, of social pressure. And this challenge stems from the lack of information we have of both the decision maker and the evaluated party. However, fortunately, there is sport, and with sport we have this environment in which data is pretty much available and it's pretty much rich, so we can use it to create this kind of context where evaluation must be made. Having a look at the literature review, we see that behavioral economists have consistently shown that individuals are typically averse to inequalities. For example, there are the beautiful works from Charles Rabin and Ferdinand Smith in 1999. And they often seek for social approval. And what we also saw from the literature is that indeed social referees are biased in their decisions, and most of the times these papers talk about the social pressure, so the pressure that may come from the fans, from the stadium. And but talking about the fairness, the concept of fairness, there are few papers talking about it. For example, there is the work from Plesner and Besch in 2001, in which they created this experiment testing if referees indeed in their evaluation in giving the penalties, they could be affected by the previous decision they made. And there are also other papers in basketball and baseball. So we aim to answer two key questions. So if the referee exhibit indeed this inequity aversion and this desire of being impartial during their ongoing evaluation, and also if their decision making change based on the prior decisions. So if the decision taken before has an effect on the decision of the future during the same game, of course. Okay, now we have a look of the theoretical model we developed. We built it in following the inequity aversion theories of Charles Rabin and Ferdinand Smith, and this incorporates what we think is the referee's aversion to affecting the match in an unfair way. So if we think about the utility of the referees, of course, as every other individuals, they aim to maximize this utility, and we include in this utility the cost related to make a mistake, because these mistakes can have an influence in their career, in the approval of their peers or players, and everything related to their job. And also we include in this utility function the inequity of a decision that they create during the game. So the referee's utility function looks like the one you can see here, and this is minus this utility coming from a mistake, minus theta times the inequity created to the power of gamma. Okay, now here the theta is the degree of inequality aversion. It can range from 0 to 1, and gamma here shows the sensitivity of the inequity that they created. And since it's greater than 1, we assume that this sensitivity is convex, so increases. So let's see how this utility function works. Let's assume there is an episode about a penalty or red or a yellow card in favor of the team X, and this is true with probability P. So the utility of the referee in case he awards the penalty, so U sub A, is equal to P times 0, and this is the case in which he doesn't make a mistake, so he will receive 0 as a disutility, so he doesn't have any disutility. Plus 1 minus P, this is the probability of making the mistake, since the probability of the penalty is P, times the disutility, minus phi, minus theta, and theta is the inequity that he created, or unbalanced, that he created giving the penalty. Instead, in the other end, if he doesn't give the penalty, so we have a utility P times minus phi, because in this case he's making a mistake with probability P, plus 1 minus P, that is probability of not making a mistake because he's not giving the penalty that doesn't exist, with probability 0, with a disutility 0. So in order for the referee to give the penalty, U sub A must be greater than U sub N, and this means that the probability must be greater than phi plus theta divided by 2 phi, and we can call this P tilde, this probability P tilde, and if it's true that the referee dislikes to affect the outcome. So dislike to create an imbalance or an inequity during the game. So if theta is greater than 0, we have that this probability, p tilde, must be greater than a half, so 0.5. Okay, now suppose that a penalty has been already awarded to the team X. And we have to consider now another episode occurring for the team Z, which is true. This penalty episode is true with probability Q. So it's a penalty with probability Q. And again, we have the utility of the referees in two scenarios. The first scenario is when he awards the penalty. We have the with probability Q times P is correct both times, so the first and the second times. So he gets 0 as this utility. And then with probability Q times 1 minus P is making only one mistake, so you will receive only minus phi. With probability 1 minus Q times P is making, again, only one mistake, so again, minus phi. And with probability 1 minus Q times 1 minus P is making 2 mistakes. It will receive 2 minus phi. In this case, it doesn't have, it is not affected by the inequality, so there is no theta, minus theta here, because he's giving the penalty to both teams, so the inequality balance out. Instead, if he's not giving the penalty, we have more or less the same equation, just changed, because here, instead of 0, he's making a mistake. But we have the inequity created because he gave the penalty to the first team, X, and it is not giving the penalty to team Z, so there is an inequity. And this probability Q must be greater than phi minus theta this time, divided by 2 phi. And we can call this Q tilde. And since before the theta was entering with a plus, now it's with a minus, we have the evidence criterion to award the penalty to team Z after awarding the penalty to team X. This time is lower. So this is the first assumption we make through the model. Now there is another scenario in which the penalty was already awarded to X, and now there is another episode of a penalty for the team X. More or less, we have the same utility functions. Now the probability of this episode is true is probability R. But the difference here is if the referee gives the penalty, he receives as a cost 2 times theta to the power of gamma, and this is a number greater than 2 times theta, because this to the power of gamma is greater than 1. If it doesn't give the penalty, there is still only 1 time the cost of getting an inequity. In this case, R must be greater than this number, and because of the 2 to the power of gamma minus 1 is greater than 1, we have at the end that in other words, let's say, the referee to give the second penalty to the same team, this probability must be greater than the probability of before, p tilde. So R tilde must be greater than p. So at the end, the key assumptions are the awarding a penalty after a penalty was awarded to the opposing team requires a lower evidence. Instead, awarding a second penalty to the same team requires a higher evidence. And this is our theoretical model, our assumptions. Okay, now having a look to our data set, it includes, about 18,000 match from the top 5 European soccer leagues. So from La Liga, Bundesliga, Ligue 1, Serie A, and the Premier League for 10 seasons, so from 2012 until 2022. And we downloaded the data from ESPN.com, but we got the match commentaries. So, and basically this data came with a line for almost every minute of the game. We extracted from this commentary all the relevant episodes like goals, penalties, red cards, everything possible, with exact timestamp, so with exact minute of the game. And then we decided to segment every game into equal 100 percentile-based segmentation. And we did it because we wanted to have like an equal representation of every match to be equal inside our data set. And this is because, as you know, at the end of the regular time, referees give an additional time, the injury time. So the length of the games may vary during inside our data set. Actually, they do vary. So we decided for each game to be equally represented, we decided to have the same number of observation for game. Okay, here we show the preliminary evidence of our study. This is still at the match level, so we wanted to compare the three decisions, the three episodes that come from the referees, the penalty, the red cards and the yellow cards between home and away, with other situations like goals or shots. And as you can see, while shots and goals are negatively correlated to each other, not to each other, to home and away, we see that the decision made by the referees are instead positively correlated. So, and this, of course, may be due for many reasons. This is just a preliminary evidence. But for example, if you look at the penalty, we see that penalties home and penalties away are correlated, positively correlated, and there is not a proper explanation for it. But of course, we will see that these results also are robust when we control for the dynamics of the games. Okay, here I present you the statistics of our data set. As you can see, there are many observations, more than 1,700,000, because of course these are observations for each time frame of each minute of the each game of our data set. And the first 6 variables here are the dependent variable we will use, and basically are the probability of a penalty kick or a red card or a yellow card inside each of the time frame in our data set. And indeed they are very small because at least for penalty and red cards, these are kind of rare events during a game. And then we have the score difference between home and away that is calculated again for each of the time frame. And then we generate the cumulative variables, and basically are the cumulative sum of each episode from time 0 until time t-1. And then of course we have the controls for the strength of the teams. We calculated for example the probability that home team wins, and this is we created using the bet odds from betting websites and the Elo scores that are very similar to the Elo scores from chess, for example, that they are updated every week for each club. And at the end we have also the additional time for the first and the second half. Okay, this graph shows the probability of the home team, the solid line, and the away team, the dashed line, to receive a penalty kick in function of the difference in the penalty kicks assigned by the referee time t-1. As you can see clearly, the probability of awarding a further penalty to the home team is high when 1 or 2 penalties have been already awarded to the away team. So when this difference is negative, while this probability decreases when 1 or 2 penalties have been already awarded to the home team. So when this difference is positive. We see more or less the same with the dash line for the away team. And maybe you notice that in 0 there is this difference, and this is given by the home advantage in giving a penalty, like the referee giving a penalty to the home team instead of the away team. So this difference is the home advantage. If we look at the graphs also of red cards and yellow cards, we see basically the same results. And maybe it's more clear for the yellow cards, where the number of yellow cards, the number in difference of yellow cards span from -5 to +5, and it's clear that the solid line, the blue line, when this difference is negative, so we're given more, like the referee gave more more yellow cards to the away team, the probability or the home team is greater, and it decreases when like reaches 0 and then stays pretty much steady. And there's this opposite result for the away team. But of course, these are just preliminary results, so they don't show anything about the dynamics of the game. Okay, this is the econometric model we used, and as I said, we have minute-by-minute events. So we control also for many dynamics during the game. This is the model for home team, and we also run for the away team. And here we have the dependent variable that is way sub ith, that is a binary variable that for the decision of the referee in the match I at the minute t. We have the same variable lagged of 1 time frame for both the home team and the away team. And then in our model we add the score difference at the time t-1, because we think that this is it's a very good control to understand the tactics of the teams when they lose or where they are winning. Then we add the cumulative variables that I showed before, and basically these variables measure the events related to attacking and defensive tactics. For example, the shots, the faults they do, like the teams do during the game. W is a vector for coverage controlling for the quality of the teams, the probability, for example, the probability of the home team to win, or the ELO scores. And Z is another vector of controls. We control for closed doors, for the size of the audience, and also, of course, the length of the game, the length of the additional time, plus the error term. In this case, in this model, the null hypothesis is that by beta 1 and beta 2 are equal to 0. So, in other words, there is not an influence from previous situations, previous episodes on the referee decisions. But our alternative hypothesis is that here in the model, beta 1 is smaller than 0, statistically smaller than 0. So an episode occurred previously to the same team, to the home team, as a negative effect on the probability of the future for the same episode, and beta 2 to be greater than 0. Okay, here are the results. On this table, we show the OLS estimation for our model. And I forgot to say that to improve the interpretability of the coefficients, in the model we multiply for 100, because in this way each coefficient shows the change in the probability of awarding a penalty in the whole game and not just inside the time frame. It's basically the same, because at the end we split the game in 100, so it's the same interpretation. Just it's easier to see the results, the coefficient. So in this table, in the first 3 columns, we use the dependent variable, the probability of home receiving a penalty, and in the last 3, we have the away team receiving a penalty. And as you can see, the results are pretty straightforward, because when the cumulative penalties for home increase. So, for example, let's say there was a penalty for home in the previous part of the game, the probability to receive another penalty decreases by 3.5 percentage points, while increases if the penalty in the previous part of the game, previous minutes of the game, was awarded to the away team. And these results are pretty much consistent when we control for fouls, for shots, for when we introduce also the league and season fixed effects. And we see the opposite effects for the away team because of the model as we get the model. When a previous penalty was given to the home team, the probability of away team receiving a penalty increases by almost 3% during the game. And this is also consistent, more or less, during the different models with different controls. Here are the results for the red cards, and pretty much we have the same results. Again, when the red card was given to the home team, the probability of the home team receiving against another red card decreases. Even when we control for fouls, for shots, we also introduced here the control for yellow cards, because part of the red cards usually come from yellow cards. So, and again, these results are pretty consistent, and they are in the opposite sign for the away team. So when a red card was given to the home team in the previous part of the match, the probability of receiving a penalty for the away team increases in a statistical significant way. These are the results for the yellow cards. Here the coefficients are a bit higher, because indeed the yellow cards are less rare than the red cards and penalty kicks. But again, we have more or less the same results. When yellow cards was given before to home team, the probability of another yellow card to the home team decreases, and increases when it was given to the away team. And this is pretty much the same when we control for shots, for fouls, and of course also for away team. Then we decided to create some heterogeneity in our sample, so we split our sample in taking into account different contexts. For example, in the first two columns, we have the situation in which the VAR technology was present in this is the column 2, and when it was not, so in the first season of our dataset. And pretty much we have that the results don't change. We have something, we lose some significance in the penalties, because maybe the number of games in which the use of the VR are less than the one when there was not. But if we see the yellow cards, this effect doesn't change. And of course, the VR in this case doesn't affect the calls of the referee, but it does affect the red cards. And again, we lose some significance here, but maybe we can say that there is an effect of the VR in the decision of the referee when they have to take decision indeed of the red cards, and maybe there is some better effect on them. When we split our sample in games where there was the crowd at the stadium, and when the games were under behind closed doors, we see pretty much the same situation of before. So we lose some significance for penalty kicks and red cards, but we don't see any difference in yellow cards. But maybe also, again, in our sample there were not many games with closed doors, so maybe this may affect the results. And lastly, we tried to control for the experience of the referees. In this case, we like to account for the experience. We created a variable that was taking into account the number of days in which the referees were indeed referees. So from their debut until the game, until the day of the game, and then we split into half by the median of this value. So I think we had like at least 20% of missings because we didn't have the day of the debut of every of the referees. But again, like we have pretty much the same results for penalties and red cards. But for the yellow cards, we keep the same results of before. They never change it. And these are true also controlling for league and season fixed effect and other controls. So at the end, we can say that this behavior could be intrinsic in the preferences of referees, even if we see some changes when there is, for example, the new technologies or when there is not the crowd. So we can assume that it's an intrinsic desire of the referee and not just the external effect of the social pressure. We conducted some robustness checks, and we saw that our findings are robust to using a different model instead of the linear probability model, so also with the probability estimation. We also, instead of the splitting each game in 100 time frames, we split in 10 frames. So, and this is because to understand if some episode occurring in the first part of the game, so not just consecutively, but maybe at the beginning of the game, has an effect on frames, on episode at the end of the game. And we saw that we pretty much have the same results. And we also controlled for fouls and shots in the previous 15 frames. So from the frame t-16 until the frames t-1. And we see the same results. Okay, now this is the second half of our study. In this part, we study the additional time given by the referees. And what we observed is, you can see from the graph, then when we observe the average additional time given by the referees as a function of the score at the last minute of the regular time, so at the 19th minute, we see that the referee tends to give more time when the home team is behind, so the difference is -1, but also when the away team is behind, so when the difference is +1, so the home team is winning by a goal. And if in the case of -1, so the effect could be because of home advantage. So when the home team is behind, the referee maybe could try to prolong the time to give more chances, let's say, to the home team. This cannot explain why the referee will give more time to the away team when they are losing. So what we did is to restrict our data to the games that were closely contested at the last minute, when the referee gave the additional time. So, and we have a sample of pretty much 65% of our games. So, in like most of the games were highly contested until the end. The descriptive statistics of this sample, we have the additional time, and on average was more or less 5 minutes. Then we have the frequency of the times in which the home was behind, the frequency when the game was in a draw, and when the away was behind, and then all the controls for the additional time, that for the loss of time that could of course affect the additional time given by the referee, and of course also the probability of to win the game. Yeah. Yep. And these are our preliminary results of this model, of this part of the research. And as you can see, in both cases, when OM is behind and away is behind, even controlling for all the possible situation in which during the game, during the second time, because these are calculated only for the second time, there could be a loss of time. Still, in both cases, the referee prefers to give more time than when the teams are in a draw. So our interpretation in this case is that the referee prefers to close before the games when they are in a draw, because he will feel like he will receive a greater utility from a score that is equal. So it's basically the same that we saw before, and yeah, like it's an inequity aversion. Could be an inequity aversion. And these are pretty consistent. These coefficients are pretty consistent and significant across all the models when we control for the VR reviews. For example, these have a huge effect on the additional time. So, to conclude, our conclusion are that referees indeed, like many other decision makers, might show a tendency to balance their calls, their decisions, and test results shows that their decisions are also not independent from the past, so they are influenced by the previous decisions on almost everything they do during the game. These behaviors indicate that they are during the game, during the evaluation of the game, are actively trying to avoid creating the perception of unfairness to both the teams or also to the crowd, and trying to get some implication outside the sport. These results can reflect a psychological tendency that could be found not only in sport, also in high-stakes environments, such as the legal system. For example, when judges have to evaluate, like referees, they must be driven only by the situation, by the episode, and not by the consideration of previous decisions they made during their career, or by similar results they have seen before. So these are our implications, our conclusion. Thank you for your attention. Now, if you have some questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Leo. I'm just going to give you a team round of applause, and a few others have. That was a really, really very interesting talk. Thank you very much. We have lots of time for questions and comments. So if anyone wants to raise their hands and ask questions, please do go ahead. Jorge.
Hi. Hey, George.
Here I am. Hello, Leo. Thank you very much for your talk. I love that you did stuff on fairness and just fairness, you call it, and that's, I guess, my comment. I don't know if you know, I did write a book on justice, fairness, and the VAR, which was published a few years ago, and maybe you want to look at it, because I guess my question is, in this case, is more philosophical. It has to do with your concept of fairness, which I think is wrong. You're talking about justice, and you are defining justice by the fact that it is good, acceptable, that referees are, giving as much penalties and giving as much time or stuff for home and away teams. But it is impossible with any data that we could gather to actually determine whether they are making the correct decisions. Because actually what I conclude in my book is that fairness is unachievable. because you have to define what is correct first, and we cannot do that. You can discuss about a sense of justice in your work, but even talking a bit of the regressions, I really don't know if we are able to capture whether one team is attacking more or not. You have shots and stuff, but there are so many variables. I was thinking about right now before talking to you about this game of Barcelona and Chelsea when Iniesta scored this last goal in the last minute with Guardiola. That was the only shot for Barcelona in the game. So, but of course, you can discuss whether is there any better data. Well, there could be. How many were they playing inside the goalkeeper yard and stuff. But in terms of what I'm saying, I think maybe you want to think a bit about what you're aiming for in terms of, am I thinking about, I'm defining, it would be good for teams to be treated the same by referees. And you can define it like that, and it's okay, but I think you have to do the discussion. And it would be great if you look at my book.
Definitely. Thank you, George. Yeah, very good point, because indeed, this was also my the problem that I thought a lot about, because in this case, of course, we have subjective evaluations, even if on a penalty, we can see that many times when a penalty for many is clear, for many others is not clear, because there might be a wrong evaluation for one of the two sides. And yes, we try to control for all the possible variables, as I said, for the score. So maybe this can control for how much they are attacking or not, for how many shots in the previous part of the game. So indeed we try to control for what you say, but of course sport in general, it's very stochastic, so there are many things going on, and as you say, maybe just one opportunity you score, or many opportunities and you don't score. So, and I think it's pretty difficult to catch this part of the research of the changing of the dynamic of a game. So so we will look to see if there are more detailed data that maybe can try to control more, let's say. And I will, of course, look at your book.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jorge. That makes me think, actually, based on Jorge's comment. I wouldn't, because obviously you're looking at each of these minute or minute-ish segments, and you're basically finding that the frequency of penalties being awarded is different and the scoreline is different. I guess an objection is that maybe a team that's won a penalty commits more fouls, and they behave differently, and so there are more penalties to be called, irrespective of how right or wrong they are. Presumably in the data you've got fouls, so you could look at fouls in a way you've looked at yellows and red cards, and just control for that, perhaps.
Yes. In one of the paper I mentioned at the beginning, I think it was the one from basketball. They control for fouls, but I think in that case, like in basketball, it's a bit different, because they are still very subjective, but the range of fouls are maybe less broader than the one for football, for soccer. But yeah, of course we can control. We can try to test also as a dependent variable the fouls. I think we will try.
Cool. Peter has his hand up.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Leo, for your talk. Very interesting. So my question relates to the referee experience. So I know you have, in your robustness, you've split it by low and high experience. So one simple question from that is, what was your cutoff in terms of how many games, presumably it's games, how many games of experience do you define as somebody with high experience? And then kind of from that, I was thinking, I'm going back to your theoretical model.
Yeah, I can show you.
You don't need to. I've made some notes. It's fine. But this. So the previous. So I think it was slide 7. I think. Yeah, this one. I was just wondering, in terms of that utility function, whether the disk, and this links to the referee experience, whether the disk utility from mistakes might vary depending on the, perhaps rather than the experience, but maybe the age of the referee, so like career concerns. So if I'm an older referee, do I care less about making mistakes? In the same way, I'm an older academic who perhaps cares less about making mistakes now than perhaps I once did 25 years ago or such. But I realise this is being recorded, so this will now be for public consumption across the world. So, just your thoughts on that, really.
Yeah, could be. I think we do have the variable about the age of the referees, and we are also thinking because we have also other controls for the referee propension to give penalties, to give red cards. So we will test also controlling for these variables. As I said, it's a preliminary work. About the age, could be. I think the experience, like in terms of days of them being a referee in this top tiers competition, I don't think it varies much, because probably they start, like, very likely they started at the same age, their debut, I mean. So I don't know if we will see much difference, but of course we can try. Maybe there is an effect of age, or we can also think about age squared. So maybe there's a different effect, like a converse effect on it. But of course we will try to go deeper for the propension of referees to be more or less like, I don't know how to say, like bad in giving penalties, like severe in giving penalties and red cards. Thank you, Peter. Very good point.
Thanks, Peter. More questions and comments? Stefan.
Yeah, hi Leo. That was a very nice paper. I think it's very neat because it clearly fits with, I think, what we probably all believe intuitively sounds right. It sounds right. So it's nice to see the data showing it appears to be right. I'd make 2 comments. One sort of one on the econometrics, and another on the interpretation, on the philosophy of this. So on the econometrics, the problem, it seems to me, is can you really distinguish this this tendency of the referees to try to even up decision making against the possibility, and I think it was implied by some of the earlier comments, that there are just games where, you know, the game's pretty rough and the players are going at it pretty hard. So if there's one penalty on one side, it's not unlikely there's going to be another one, because they're just going at it really violently, as opposed to other games where that doesn't happen. And it seems to me that kind of sort of tit for tat phenomenon in sports is very common. I mean, if you think in ice hockey, kind of famously, if you do a body check on one of the players on the other team are going to start a fight. That's that's an unwritten rule of hockey, as I understand it. And then, you know, in cricket, if my team's bowling bounces at you, trying to take your head off, then your team's going to do the same to me. Or in baseball, if the pitcher throws a pitch that hits the player, again, automatic fight, automatic retaliation. You know, it just endless. You know, this is tit for tat in sport is absolutely a central phenomenon. And how do you know that this isn't? I mean, you said what's the alternative hypothesis? Well, it seems to me tit for tat is the alternative hypothesis. So can you really distinguish this from a kind of tit for tat theory, which goes for penalties, fouls, red cards, yellow cards, the whole lot? So that's the sort of the sort of more the sort of econometric thing. Can you really identify this? And then on the philosophical thing, again, Alex is here, so Alex knows what I'm going to say now. So I mean, you can't say that fairness is an entirely subjective concept. What means fair to you is not what means fair to me.
Definitely.
You might think the hand of God was fair. I still don't, right? And we're not going to settle that. There's no way we're going to reach agreement. James agrees with me, obviously. Alex obviously disagrees with me. That's just that. But we cannot say. We actually cannot say. So you cannot say what is fair. You cannot identify fairness. You cannot, and unless you're going to go and interview all these referees, you don't know what they think is fair. You just don't know. I think that concepts like inequity aversion, which sounds like it's a moral statement, but isn't really, because actually it's just saying there's a preference for evenness, for lack of difference. That seems to me to be perfectly reasonable. You can say that. So I just think this is just a language thing. It used to be that economists were always absolutely scrupulous in saying that we don't make moral judgments. It seems to me it's creeping in now a little bit that people are starting to do this. And to be honest, I think it's a little bit of looseness that we can just get rid of. It's easy for us to say, we don't know, we can talk about these concepts without necessarily trying to use moral statements, which we don't know, and we're not qualified to use anyway.
Okay, I start. Sorry. Thank you, Stefan. I start from the last one, the philosophical one. Yeah, no, indeed, nobody can say what is fairness or fair for the referee or not. But our point here is to show that they try to be perceived as fair as possible. So by compensating one of the team after making a mistake, or not making a mistake. So they just lower what they need to give a penalty or a red card or a yellow card. So just to be perceived by the fans or also by the players as fair as possible. So
but hold on, you don't know that. You have no idea. There's
we don't know.
Nothing in your data tells you that. I mean, why you tell a great story. It's a very clear story about what happens. Just descriptive. Just tell people what happens. What's your evidence that this is in the mind of the referees? Do you have any evidence at all about what the referees are actually thinking?
No, if the question is this one, no, we don't have.
So
maybe
you don't claim to know what the referees are thinking. Yet your phenomenon is interesting enough without actually making that claim. It's actually an interesting paper without saying that, right?
Yeah, but a way would be to run an experiment, like a controlled trial on referees, to see if indeed even controlling for everything would be also possible to see, and of course asking questions on their status, on their life in general. They are more inequity averse or not. Maybe this is a different way. Of course, we don't show what they think in this case. We just show the results of them. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, no, but my point is clear, but you're making it unclear by making claims when your presentation, which you can't back up and which you don't need. I mean, it's sort of redundant because you don't need it. It's good enough. You're plenty good enough without that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. Any more? Alex.
Just for the record, I do agree with Stefan on that. So.
Do you have any other questions, Alex, or is it just?
No, it's a nice. It's a good one, really. There are here and there things, but this is a good one. I liked it.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Raphael.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Leo. Thank you very much for your talk.
Hi, Raphael.
I was wondering about your subsample results with the VAR and without the VAR.
Yeah.
If I got it correctly, you get the same result, right, for the penalty kicks at least, so with and without the VAR. And
Yeah.
I was wondering why wouldn't we expect any sort of bias to decrease in the presence of VAR? So that would be my question. And my suggestion would be maybe you could additionally look at baseball umpires. So they do have to call whether a pitch is a strike or a ball, but in the setting of baseball, we would actually know the correct call, right? So we actually would know whether it would have been a strike or a ball. I don't know whether this has been done already, but this might be another setting to look at as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Yeah, maybe we can try also with baseball. I don't really know much about like this, like the sport in general, but yeah, maybe we can have a look at it. About the question about the VR, if I remember well, it was about why we don't see any difference between the two contexts. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good question. I don't really have an answer to this, but I guess that when this is a guess, so again, we cannot show by our data, when a referee takes a decision, even in front of the evidence that he may be wrong, he could just stay stuck with his own decision. I don't know if this is a good explanation, but what we can see, instead of using VAR or not, maybe we have more or less the same results for red cards and penalty. So one of them loses the significance. So maybe they would be more. They are more propense to one of the teams, even if at the end the coefficients are pretty the same, with or without. So, but they just are not significant. But the reason behind it's pretty hard to think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, and I like that as a robustness check, Leo. And I wonder whether this is actually an argument that players do give referees the opportunity to make, the evening up penalty call, because the calls that are being made aren't wrong enough based on some kind of emotion or something that's not taking place in the actual game, such that they're not being overturned by VAR. I mean, obviously there's always grey area in all these kinds of calls, but it does suggest to me, at least, that this is a robustness check, which I think is really good. That it is, I don't know, maybe it isn't, but it kind of suggests to me that maybe it is a change in what's happening on the field in terms of the opportunities being afforded to referees to make a penalty call after penalty calls have or haven't been previously made.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I wondered also on your robustness whether you might have looked at big. I think you kind of. I guess you've got crowd there, so the size of the crowd. But I wondered about rivalries. So when Liverpool plays Manchester United, or Barcelona plays Real Madrid or something like that, where this level of scrutiny is a lot higher than lots of other matches, and also where the players might be more inclined to behave in a more boisterous manner. I don't know whether you thought about looking at big rivalry matches as a robustness check.
Yeah, could also be would be very, very also cool to see if there's a change in terms of many different aspects of the episodes, like falls also, because for sure there's more competition into a situation, and so a penalty will be the effect of a wrong penalty on the referee would be higher as a disutility than in a normal game of two teams that are not very competitive to each other. Thank you, James.
Jorge's got his hand up.
Hello, but maybe, before VAR, what you have in the data set is the penalties that the referee actually called, right?
Yeah.
Because by definition, after the VAR, you have the penalties that were accepted by VAR.
Yeah.
Some of them were called by the referee, and some of them were not called by the referee. So maybe what this is saying is that we don't need VAR, and it was more fun before, and it didn't make a difference. It's suggestive, it's not conclusive, but it's certainly a hypothesis that maybe not in this paper, but you can actually think about it, because VAR makes the football slower and sometimes just boring, waiting for the decision. But if this is a result that we could be conclusive, forget about VAR for penalties. On average, I guess,
Yeah, no, indeed. I was also surprised to see these results, and I still cannot explain, as I said before, why we don't see any difference. And I don't know if it's because of the referee or the call of the VAR from the other referees inside the check room. They are also affected by the same bias. Could be, but yeah, I don't have an explanation. But I truly think that VR is important, and I would keep as a technology because it seems to work in general, but in our data seems it doesn't. So maybe it needs more data to understand if it's correct or not.
I think that's a really interesting point about the penalties, though, Jorge. I guess it kind of makes me think of type 1 and type 2 errors. Obviously, before VAR, if the referee didn't give the penalty, it isn't in the data. But then after VAR, you've got penalties that weren't given by the referee, but then were given by the referee's team. So you've got kind of a different data set composition in effect, which is, could be quite interesting to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
Peter.
So just thinking out loud here, so this could go completely wrong. So thinking about going back to the previous point about VAR and the introduction of VAR, and then going back to your model again, because obviously you're talking about mistakes. Now, quite often, maybe prior to VAR, referees might not know they've made a mistake or think they haven't made a mistake, and then subsequently maybe a red card is overturned or there is some information that's provided in post-match analysis. Whereas obviously VAR, with the decision-making, that can confirm whether there are grey areas, as James has said, but they can confirm whether the referee's made the right call or not. And I think what might be interesting here is then seeing what happens subsequently in terms of their decision-making and the behaviour, either to the team that was either wrongly or rightly given the call, and obviously the opposition. So I think there's some further scope to do, because you've got this within match analysis here. I think there is scope to do something with the VAR decision making, and obviously whether it overturns or otherwise the on-field call of the referee.
Yes, I think we could do that, because in our data from like the first data I showed about the match commentaries, we have the decision made by the VAR. So if it was called by the other referees in the check room, or by if the decision was correct or not. So we have this data. I think we can get it. So we can also understand better this result I showed, if it's correct or not, or if that it depends on other situation. Thank you, Peter.
It's worth noting that the same effect you should see for a penalty, you should see for a red card as well, because the red cards will be checked but yellow cards won't be checked. So you perhaps should expect to see something in the first two situations, but not in the yellow card results.
Yeah, exactly. Because yellow cards are just, they cannot be affected by the VR. But yeah, surprisingly, we thinking about the other half, when we control for the crowd, we have the same results. Like yellow cards in this case are, I mean, from the literature we see that there is an effect of the social pressure from the stadiums when there is or when there is not the crowd. But in our case, on this kind of effect, is not very, like, it's not changing much.
Yeah. And just remind me, obviously beforehand I mentioned the kind of the non, obviously in your case you're looking at where a referee decides to even things out by making the same decision for both teams. And I mentioned that my bugbear was when a team gets given a corner and it wasn't obvious, and then the corner goes in and the referee finds, it appears, a reason to blow the whistle and give a foul against the attacking team to even things up there. I can't remember from your results, did you kind of do the same thing here where you looked at the impact of cumulative reds and yellows, or the kind of score of reds and yellows on likelihood of giving a penalty? Because I guess, you've given a red card against the team and you think you want to even it up, maybe you give a penalty to that team.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. We are thinking with Professor Scoppa to look at it, because of course there might be an effect of giving a penalty, and also like to compensate giving a red card to the other team, or to the same team. They gave it a penalty to compensate for the penalty. The problem in this case would be that we have to look better at the data, because sometimes there are penalties that comes together with a red card. So to avoid this situation, we have maybe to lag the observation of 2 or 3 of observation to see if a penalty given maybe in the first half has an effect on the red cards in the second half, for example. But the problem, I mean, it's not a problem, but maybe also this one is a philosophical question, because for the penalties we have an effect, a clear effect of this decision on the game, on the outcome, because we know that around 0.75% of the penalties are scored by the kickers, but it's not clear the effect of a red card on the end of on the outcome, and of course not even, it's impossible to understand the effect of a yellow card on the outcome. So this is because, of course, the dynamics of the game. A team could be played better in 10 than in 11. We can see that it often happens, of course. On average, no, but can happen. Maybe they have an influence in their spirit, let's say, in their way. They play more, they play harder when they are maybe 10 than when are 11. So there is a change in the behavior of the players, so we cannot control this kind of thing.
Any more questions and comments? Just quickly, you've made me think of something else which you may have already looked at as well. Obviously, you mentioned that penalties can be missed. Do you see the same effect if the penalty is missed as the penalty scored?
No, we still didn't have a look at the effects of a penalty when it was scored or not, because of course this may change the inequity created in our utility function on the referee. But we can have a look at it to see.
Presumably the referee doesn't feel the need to even things up if the penalty wasn't scored.
Or maybe the referee will think, okay, I gave you the opportunity and you didn't score. But of course, this again is something we cannot observe in our data now. We can think about. About it.
Okay. Any more questions and comments? Well, thank you very much, Leo. That was a really, really interesting talk. As many comments have said, it was very clearly presented. A really interesting topic that just kind of makes sense intuitively. And it's great that you found results that are really fascinating as well. So thank you very much for that. Wish you well as you develop the research. And obviously, as I said at the start, do consider the Sports Economics Review as an outlet for your research. We will be back again next week. Next week, we switch from football to table tennis. And we have Megan Sullivan from Heriot-Watt University, who's going to present home advantage in the local league table tennis matches. So, wish you all a great weekend. Thanks once again, Leo. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, James.
See you all again soon.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you and congrats.
Thank you.